Well, yeah, I'm a fucking lesbian. Get out of my face. There we go. See, I said it on here now. There we go.
I tried to protect you, but he said it again.
Well, that's a red rag to a very childish bull. You should know this by now.
Hey guys, it's Kristi. Moving right along, ignoring Kevin. Just
no, we were talking about Kristi's lesbian Indian husband. That's what we were talking about. So, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get that later. Not really, no. It's a very vague, mixed up reference. Anyway, hello everyone. Welcome to the happy hour. It's me, Kristi, because it's Kristi and Kev's happy hour. And what would a happy hour be without my co-host, Kevin? How are you doing tonight, Kevin?
I'm exceptionally well, bathing in the glorious glow of both the sunshine and the royal wedding, which I fucking paid for. Oh, that's fun. Yeah, so I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, doing all right. Thanks for asking. Good. I see people in the chat are all right. Hey, a little shout out to people in the chat.
Fuck people in the chat.
Yeah, get Kevin's backhanded love or compliment love early on. Before we get on to the topic that everyone is here to hear us talk about, we're going to do the pub quiz question, and we're going to talk about two channels that have put out content recently that are both absolutely fantastic. So, first of all, Kevin, you want to talk about, have you seen both of them? Because I have, and I don't know if you have time to watch both.
I have indeed, yes. They're both really, very good.
Well, do you want to take one, and then I'll take whichever one you didn't pick? And just give a little...
Yeah. I'll take the one I know you want to take, because I'm just that way inclined. The real peer review video done by Kristi, which was really, really good breakdown of this Twitter account called Real Peer Review, who are, as the title suggests, right-wing pseudoscience fucking hacks, who basically just sneer at bits of science they don't like. That's it. And Kristi lays that out brilliantly. I presume you've linked them below the videos in question, and I will under monitor of this. Yes, go and watch it. Otherwise, you're a smelly poopy pants.
Well, yes, it came, the video, I'm going to talk about Essence of Thoughts video on incels, which I should look up the title. I don't have it in front of me now. I feel like a jackass, but go to the channel. It's the most recent video about incels.
Always the most prepared we are here on this channel.
Because I got a sneak preview like you did. I couldn't release the address until it went public, so I'm going to have to add that in there, as well as whatever else we talk about tonight for links. So look for the links for various references in the description box after the show. But yes, the one that I wanted to big up, not that Essence of Thought needs us to shout their channel out, because I think they have like 24,000 subscribers, so no problem there. But it's a really good video breaking down some YouTuber incel sort of dude, breaking down the misogyny and just exposing some of the thinking.
Just for clarity, it's called "Starve Single Mothers to Create Sex Slaves: A Critical Response."
Yes, exactly that.
Yes.
So I hope you guys wrote that down really quick, because it's a very long title.
Yes. Yeah. There we go. Just type in Essence of Thought, and it's the latest video from them. Yes, who we had obviously on the show a couple of episodes ago, which was a lot of fun and might have been useful given the possible second topic we'll talk about later, given the where they live. Anyway, yes. We're going to do two fantastic videos. Go and check those out. Now trivia and stuff or something.
Yeah. So from paulsquiz.com again, thank you for their general knowledge quiz section. The question today is did I get that right? Yeah, paulsquiz.com. In which U.S. state is Area 51 located?
Well, I know Roswell is in New Mexico, so I'm thinking that would be a clue, certainly to the region. But would it be in New Mexico?
Well, there are some guesses in the chat. So do you want to take a guess, Kevin?
Okay, I'm going to go with. Fuck it! I'm going to stick with New Mexico because of Roswell.
All right, so Kevin's going New Mexico. 3 people in the chat have gone with New Mexico. Oh, sorry, not New Mexico. Sorry, Tom popped up with New Mexico right when I was going to say Nevada, which is what Joey Jojo, Philip Rice, and Dog on the Roof guessed. It's Nevada.
Oh, okay. So
I
they've
I
got
think I
nuclear
think
waste. They've got nuclear wasteland, cultural wasteland in Vegas, and Area 51. That's Nevada in a nutshell.
for some reason I thought it was in Arizona, so I was also wrong.
Oh, well, there you go. Well,
But
we're all in the
Americans are
right area.
notoriously bad at geography.
Yeah. Well, we're all in the right sort of territory.
Deserty bits.
Yeah, a bumfuck desert town. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, nowhere in a desert.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, fuck it. Rednecks in the desert. Who cares? Like I said last time, out pave over the fucking lot of it. Anyway, what was I going to say? Yeah, my bit of trivia.
Oh
Well, it's
yeah.
nothing really, no really bit of trivia, just a bit of news that amused me and annoyed the far right. Having mentioned the royal wedding, and I've made my feelings known on the topic, but one thing that was brilliant about that, obviously, was the fact that she's half black, right? Meghan Markle, that is, who's married Prince Harry, which annoyed the far right enormously. Because the fact that she's from outside their bloodline means that she's fucking deepened the genetic pool there by twice the depth, frankly. So there's a chance that their kids won't have webbed hands and feet or something. Who knows? And just to annoy the far right further, it comes out that not only is she a feminist, but she's literally had on the official royal family's webpage. She's even got that there, that she's a proud woman and a proud feminist, literally on the royal family's page. Now, if that isn't going to send the fashion to meltdown, nothing can. And I'm so for it. So there you go. Yeah,
there you go.
a little bit of information.
Princess. Oh no, she's princess now. No, she's
Yes,
Duchess. No, sorry, that's for what?
Oh, I don't fucking care.
Yeah, forget it.
She's a sponge on my fucking tax money, so I don't care.
But yes, at least one who's a feminist, even if she's.
Well, that's the thing. I don't even care what kind of. She could be the most bland milk toast fucking McFeminist ever. The fact that she calls herself so in public is hilarious to me because it's going to annoy the far right so much. Brilliant.
Yeah. And it's really the little things in life that you enjoy, Kevin, right?
Yeah, exactly. That and paving over huge amounts of developed nation. just a small little things, Anyway. Right. Are we gonna talk about our good old friend Professor JBP?
Yes, let's. Up until now, I've been rather limited in my comments on Peterson, speaking, to specific quotes or things. But I feel now I've taken in quite a lot of information, and I feel like I have an understanding of his worldview when it comes to like mostly sex relations or gender relations, and all the reasons I have problems with it. So that's it's come to a head now with this whole enforced monogamy quote in the New York Times. But that's how should we start this? Where should we?
Well, I'll screen share for a start, and we can start reading through the article and give our reactions as we go. Am I to read? I think that probably works because then it'll show up on the screen and people can see it.
I blocked your screen on too because I noticed, when we did the This Is America, I wasn't locking on my screen. So sometimes you would talk at length and people weren't looking at the video and things you were referencing. So I've fixed that in my AV mixing duties.
So we're stuck on me now, yeah?
We are stuck on you, just like was it Lionel Richie song? Got a feeling down deep in my soul that I just can't lose. Is that how it went?
And I'm on my way. Anyway. Oh, do you got to crack open a bit of the B, man? No, not B. You fucking idiot. Anyway, I've got, because it's JBP, it's in my head now. And there we go. There you can see Jordan Peterson. And actually, on the right-hand side, I'll use my cursor rather than my finger, you twat. They can't see your finger, Kev. Fuck, so I literally pointed at it like a fucking idiot. Anyway, there, see that's the Soviet Union, Soviet realism painting. And apparently he has a collection of over 200 of those sorts of things in his house. And in the actual, I think it's either in this article or somewhere else, he says that he collects them because he doesn't like them. He collects them, puts them up in his house as a way of remembering or reminding himself how bad Soviet realist art is. Now, what kind of maniac, A, collects stuff that they don't like, and B, puts it up in their house because they don't like it? I mean, there's something desperately wrong with that.
I can understand the Allen room.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Or, I don't know.
But
or put up one poster like in the toilet, so when you're having a shit, you can look at it and think to yourself, "That's what I don't like," and then the rest of the time you're happy because you've got nice art. But I've got art up in my house, but it's stuff I like looking at. Why would you put up stuff you don't like looking at in your own house, like smearing the walls in shit? It's ridiculous.
Well,
Oh,
did it
anyway.
sort of like motivate him to keep up his fight against cultural Marxism, and it's a visual reminder of all the things he despises in order to motivate him to keep going? Because he, as is
Well,
pointed
it's
out
the
on
fact
Twitter, he looks pretty miserable.
he is. He's a very unhappy man. But you would think the fact that he's able to buy a fucking mansion with the amount of money he's earned from this fucking shtick would motivate him a fair amount in of itself. And he could buy some nice art or have no art. Literally, blank walls would be better than bad art. Anyway, enough of the art critique, Kev. Come on.
Yeah, that's not
Um,
really what we're here for, but it is an interesting tidbit.
yeah, exactly. Anyway, and you can see him there posing like a twat. And the article is from the New York Times. It reads, and I'll just read through for a second. And if you want to interrupt me, Kristi, at any point, please do. Jordan Peterson, custodian of the patriarchy.
The
He says
patriarchy.
the patriarchy, indeed. He says there's a crisis in masculinity. Why won't women, all these wives and witches, just behave? Now that might seem weird, but trust me, it's explained in the article. Right, and it's obviously Toronto, that's where he lives. Jordan Peterson fills huge lecture halls and tells his audience there's no shame in looking backward to a model of how the world should be arranged. Look back at the 1950s, he says, and back even further. He tells his audiences that they are smart. He is bringing them knowledge, yes, but it is knowledge that they already know and feel in their bones. He casts the. Hang on, lobsters don't have bones, do they? I thought. I don't know. Maybe he appeals to more than just lobsters. Who knows? He casts this as ancient wisdom delivered through religious allegories and fairy tales which contain truth, he says, that modern society has forgotten. Most of his ideas stem from a gnawing anxiety around gender. Quote, the masculine spirit is under attack, he told me. It's obvious, unquote. In Mr. Peterson's world, order is masculine, chaos is feminine, which, by the way, actually, well, I'll read to the end of that little paragraph and then we'll get to it. And in an overdose of femininity is our new poison, is new poison. Mr. Peterson knows the cure. Hence his new book subtitle, An Antidote to Chaos. Now, I'll stop reading for a second. That's actually really interesting, and it's a joke I'm going to use in my series because I'm actually reading his book at the moment. I'm going to do a breakdown of it, chapter by chapter. But in the sort of opening bit, the joke basically goes that if chaos is feminine, and his book is an antidote to chaos, does he mean his book to be an antidote to women? That's fairly sound logical reasoning from me, I think. There, he's tied himself in a knot. He's tied himself in a knot and revealed what an absolutely misogynist piece of shit he is, frankly.
Kevin, I should also say there's some concern in the chat that you might be operating only on battery power and you haven't plugged your laptop in.
What do you mean?
I don't know. I think they're looking at your icons, like you're running your battery, not having it plugged in. I don't know.
Okay. Well, yeah, but I'll plug it in when I need to. Hang on, am I getting fucking? Are people like criticizing me for the way I'm doing it? If you can read the fucking thing, don't look at the icons. Yeah, fucking dickheads. Do you see, chat? This is why I despise you to the core.
They're just trying to make sure you don't drop out of the chat because your battery.
I can see the fucking battery, and it's got 60% left. Leave me the fuck alone. I'll plug it in when I need to. Dickheads. Oh,
Right.
I think Peterson's right. Peterson's right. Fuck it. Game over.
What is he right about? That femininity is chaos?
That lobsters run the world or something. I don't know. I'm angry, and Peterson obviously speaks to the angry. That's the point. Anyway, yeah, I think the point there about looking back to the 1950s is good. Do you have anything to say on what we've read so far?
I didn't want to interrupt your flow because when I go, I'm gonna have like a big thing to say. So.
Well, yeah, but this is a topic we can just riff on. Who cares? This show is not structured. It's just us chatting in a pub. Remember? Come on.
Well, I wanted you to kind of get through the bit of it, but yeah. So do you want to actually is there anything else here related to? I think this is just kind of promoting his stuff now and giving some.
I'll carry on then, and you can stop me when you feel necessary. And if anyone criticizes me for my battery usage in this, you can go fuck yourselves. Anyway, continuing. Quote, We have to rediscover the eternal values and then live them out, unquote, he says. Whenever he goes, he speaks in sermons about, so wherever he goes, he speaks in sermons about the inevitability of who we must be. You know, you can say, well, it's unfortunate that chaos is represented by the feminine. Well, it might be unfortunate, but it doesn't matter because that is how it's represented. It's been represented like that forever, which is questionable. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and there are reasons for it. You can't change it. It's not possible. This is underneath everything. If you change those basic categories, people wouldn't be human anymore. They'd be something else. They'd be transhuman or something. We wouldn't be able to talk to these new creatures, unquote.
Okay.
Which all I'm thinking now is like some sort of weird aquatic species he's thinking of or something. Like I don't quite know. Unicorns? I
All
don't know.
right. So I think I'm ready to jump in here. So like
Oh,
I
go on.
said,
Sorry, that's the word I was looking for. Sorry, go on.
I've been trying to reconstruct what his worldview seems to be, and people are welcome to try to
Shit.
quite a lot, but people are welcome to try to correct me and where they think I'm wrong. But here's my understanding of what Peterson's how he understands the world. First of all, he is what we call foundationalist. That means he thinks that there's sort of like the things exist, but they don't only exist the way that we sort of see them. They have some sort of exist, like it's sort of like the Platonic ideal. There's some notion of things having the existence itself, like having its own existence.
Yeah, kind of an essence.
Exactly. And this is what comes down to why he's so misogynistic, is he thinks that there are essential elements of being a woman or being female and being male that transcends. It's more than just the slight chemical differences in hormones and some of the way that our our sexual organs are developed, right? Those are not just physical chemical differences, minute differences when you look at the totality of what women and men share in terms of blood and organs and everything else. There is something about there's an essence of being female and an essence of being male, and that has an existence as much as the physical things. And in his mind, he can't justify this through religion, so he justifies it through evolutionary psychology.
And can I just jump
Yeah.
in to say, often the people who believe in the JBP bullshit machine, bullshit train or whatever, try and justify it on the basis that, well, just because he's saying that these are innate characteristics that make men and women completely different, doesn't mean that he's saying one is better than the other. That they're just different and complementary. Now, on the face of it, that might seem like a perfectly nice thing to say, but as we see later in the article with his reaction, which we talked about in the beforehand, Kristi, you'll see that his reaction to the woman and her opinion on the topic gives away maybe that he doesn't see them as equal at all, and that it's not complementary, or he does genuinely believe that women are lesser.
Yes, and I think this is it. When he moves into essentialism and says what women are and what women like, he's really moving into pseudoscience at this point, because this essence that he's talking about, what it means to be a woman, he can't sort of list its characteristics in a way that are definite concepts that we can observe, right? He's just playing off of stereotypes, of common references to women's behavior generally, and then turning that into a truth rather than a generalization. And the other thing he does in terms of bringing his own aesthetic to it is he does something very similar to what the early Christian theologians did. When Christianity met Greek philosophy, Christian theology could not overcome the power of Greek philosophy. It fell to its knees and basically incorporated it. And what the people, early thinkers, I think it was Aquinas who was talking about the nature of God. They thought God couldn't be complicated, couldn't be complex, because that is imperfect. What's perfect in geometry is like a sphere, a circle, and simplicity was perfection in Greek aesthetic. And so they put on their aesthetics to the notion of God, saying God has to be simple and God has to be unified, unity, and all these things. And Peterson is doing this with the masculine and the feminine when he associates the femininity with chaos, which is a subjective aesthetic connection that doesn't have an independent existence. And masculinity, just let me finish, sorry, because this is really complicated. how masculinity is order. And he does this completely subjectively and also normatively. We live in a society that values order above chaos. So, in this implicit nature of what men and women are, he's putting in a hierarchy of male supremacy as fundamental to who we are as people.
Well, can I just also say, I want to pick him up on this nonsense about it's always been represented that way. He literally says it's been represented like that forever.
Exactly.
I'd just like to point out that both Britannia and Lady Liberty are both symbols of absolute order and, you know, freedom and all the rest of it, represented as women. Mm.
Yeah, so even the generalization doesn't always bear
Exactly.
close examination.
Well, yeah, but exactly, yeah. So it hasn't always been represented that way. It's entirely your shit you're putting on it, your fucking neuroses, frankly. I can't think of another way of putting it. I don't want to play armchair psychologist, but there's something a little bit odd with the man. Anyway, shall we scuttle through a little bit more?
Yes. So, sorry, I think I wanted to just sort of set this up because, yeah, and then he tries again to just make that connection about women being chaos and men being order, and then linking this to our human natures through evolutionary psychology is how the pseudoscience sort of brings in personal preference / bias plus a little bit of science plus making this leap into pseudoscience, tying these ideas together.
Yeah, but if only the pseudoscience were kept, if that was the weirdest bit of pseudoscience he engaged in, yeah, but it isn't. As the, hang on, where is it again?
Well, this is the bit I've been focusing on.
Yeah, all these wives and witches. That's not, witches is not chosen randomly there by the author, I can assure you. Anyway, continuing. So he was radicalized, he says, because the, quote, radical left, unquote, wants to eliminate hierarchies, which he says are the natural order of the world. In his book, he illustrates this idea with the social behavior of lobsters. Yay! He chose lobsters because he's fucking mental. No, he didn't say that. He chose lobsters because they have hierarchies and are a very ancient species, and also invertebrates with serotonin. Oh, I was right, but they don't have bones. Yeah. This lobster hierarchy. Oh, fuck, I can't take the phrase "this lobster hierarchy" seriously.
I can understand that.
Apologies to any aquatic fucking, I don't know, biologists or whatever. Aquatic, what, a marine biologist? Kev, you're a twat today. Right. This lobster hierarchy has become a rallying cry for his fans. They put images of the crustacean on t-shirts and mugs because they are mugs. Anyway, the left, is that a reference Americans are going to get? Mug just means idiot. Sorry.
Probably not. Yeah, thanks for translating, Kevin.
Yeah. The left, he believes, refuses to admit that men might be in charge because they are better at it. Quote, the people who hold that our culture is an oppressive patriarchy, they don't want to admit that the current hierarchy might be predicated on competence, unquote, he said.
All right, we have to stop there. No. There is so much. No. We got to unpack. There's so much to unpack.
That's fair enough, but Kristi, we're 20 minutes in to an hour-long show, and we're on slide 3 of 13.
I think we're gonna need an after bar for this one.
Yeah, but we're going to be drinking till fucking Christmas. God damn it! Come on.
We need to hit the high points at least.
Yeah.
So the idea that hierarchies are the natural order of the world, this again ties into male supremacy, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, any woman who wants equality with a man is actually inherently bringing him down to her level and threatening the hierarchy, which is, according to the way this is characterized, which he says are the natural order of the world. Now, someone on Twitter brought this up today, and it's a very good point. This is the is-ought distinction problem that Hume pointed out, back during the Enlightenment, the 18th century. That
exactly.
just
describing the way the world is and the way the world ought to be. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So this is almost like a logical fallacy on Peterson's part, just because things were done like that in the past, or just because we can observe this doesn't mean that there is a moral component that is a way things ought to be. That something is natural means it's right. We are thinking moral beings. We can evaluate these things. And if your only justification is appeal to, we can observe this happening, you can't make a moral argument to justify it, then you haven't really made a moral argument. You've just pointed to a thing and said, because that.
Yeah. Also, it's just for a second, it's fascinating that these people, including Peterson, call us regressives when they literally want to regress society back in time. I find that piece of hypocrisy delicious.
And then to just keep this going, yes, the left refuses to admit that men might be in charge because they are better at it.
No, no, no,
Wow.
no, no, no. The radical left, please. Let's have it right.
Well, there it just says the left. I think all leftists, anyone left of him is a
No, no,
radical
look,
leftist.
it says there, literally quoted, radical left. There we
But
go.
on the second paragraph, it says the left he believes.
Yeah, but the direct quote is radical left. God damn it, woman.
All right. So Kevin being Steele Manning Peterson.
I'm not steelmanning him. I'm quoting him directly. The left is from the author. Radical left is from Peterson.
Yeah. So it's just amazing to me that it's so convenient for the people who are benefiting from the current system of power and preference would go, well, maybe we're just here because we're better. And then you look at Donald Trump and you compare him and his intelligence and his capabilities and his ability to control himself and be dignified compared to Barack Obama, right? So Barack Obama was an aberration in that office. It wasn't like it was an easy thing for a black man to get elected in America. So see, the idea that somehow the people in power are there because they're competent is, especially with the Trump administration and the number of people having to, it's a disaster. I don't know how he can say that with a straight face.
Well, not just that, but if you take the two white guys who are the bread in the Obama sandwich of presidency, I don't think you can look at the Obama aberration as anything other than an aberration. The Bush disaster, utter disaster, and the Trump impending disaster, frankly, are ultimate signs that competence isn't necessarily what this is predicated on.
Yeah, France had a hierarchy before the revolution. Like hierarchies have existed. Again, doesn't mean that they're right and that they work. In fact, most hierarchies are attacked and undermined and replaced with something else that unfortunately developed as a hierarchy, and then itself in turn is undermined. So,
and it would
bullshit.
It depends when you say competence as well. Competence in what?
Yeah.
Competence in being able to rule, not so much. Competence in being able to trick people into giving you power, probably.
Or as in the case we're seeing with Trump, try to abuse power, try to silence people, try to intimidate people.
Yeah, which again is fascinating hypocrisy, given that his fans are so often screaming about how they are silenced.
Yeah,
amazing.
The fact is, when somebody has power, all they have to do is defend that power. It doesn't mean that they're good at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't mean they're moral.
Shall we continue?
Yes, sorry.
Right. Mr. Peterson illustrates his arguments with copious references to ancient myths, bringing up stories of witches, biblical allegories, and ancient traditions. I ask why these old stories should guide us today. Quote, "It makes sense that a witch lives in a swamp. Yeah," he says. Why? It's a hard one. Right, that's right. You don't know. It's because those things hang together at a very deep level. Well, a very deep swamp level. Is that what he meant? I don't know. Right, yeah. And it makes sense that an old king lives in a desiccated tower. Unquote.
I don't know what any of this is supposed to mean.
But I want to say to all the skeptics out there, read that little stanza there and come back to me, you fucking idiots. You've been taken in by a religious huckster, a fucking woo-woo peddler of the most disgusting type. Because he's trying to dress it up as science, and it's nonsense.
He basically says, look, we've had centuries of demonizing women as witches as ways to control them. In the case of the Salem witch trial, take away their property. And there's this misogynistic figure in our society that goes up right till today. So of course the idea of an old woman living in a swamp, it makes sense, doesn't it? Like, what are you even? What is he even taught? What are the words in? Why did he put them in that order? I don't.
Let's get to the second big quote here, because this is fucking brilliant. Right. The author continues, "But witches don't exist, and they don't live in swamps, I say." Peterson responded, quote, "Yeah, they do. They do exist. They just don't exist the way you think they exist.
No.
They certainly exist. You may say, well, dragons don't exist. It's like, yes, they do. The category predator and the category dragon are the same category. It absolutely exists. It's a subordinate category. It exists absolutely more than anything else. In fact, it really exists. What exists is not obvious. You say, well, there's no such thing as witches. Yeah, I know what you mean, but that isn't what you think when you go to see a movie about them. You can't help but fall into these categories. There's no escape from them. Now that is fucking word salad gibberish. I mean, it's just silliness. This man wants to be taken seriously as an intellectual.
Can I offer a new segment for you, Kevin, for your show?
What's that?
Trump ramble or Jordan Peterson ramble?
Yes. Because that does read like something Trump would say.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All over the place, free association, stream of consciousness, expecting you to know things when you don't even know what the hell he's talking about.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I mean, it really is bullshit baffles brains type stuff. It's just, he's literally confronted with a fact, witches don't exist. And he goes, yes, they do exist. And then starts rambling on about dragons. And we can't escape these categories. What are you talking about, man?
Okay, so what he said something along the lines of there's a category of dragon, there's a category of predator.
Yeah, you may well say dragons don't exist. It's like and he says it like a teenage girl. It's like, yes, they do. The category predator and the category dragon are the same category, bitch.
Am I bothered?
Hey?
Am I bothered?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Exactly. What are you talking about, bro? Of course dragons exist, dickhead. Yes. So yeah, I mean that's brilliant. Fucking brilliant. By which I mean dreadful. Should we continue?
Oh, please.
Oh, now it gets very serious and
Now, this is not the whole article because the whole article really is really long, but these are clips from it that I just had to.
Yeah, exactly. And these are the order that Kristi sent them to me. So if it doesn't make any sense, blame her, not me. Yeah. I'm totally throwing her under the bus there. Anyway, yeah. So these but it's all in like chronological order or whatever. So
of the article, yeah.
Yeah. Quote. No, not quote. What am I talking about? Violent attacks are what happens when men do not have partners, Mr. Peterson says, and society needs to work to make sure these men are married. Quote. He was angry at God when women were rejecting him, unquote, Mr. Peterson says of the Toronto killer. Quote, the cure for that is enforced monogamy. That's actually why monogamy emerges, unquote. I think we should stop at that point.
Well, because it says Peterson does not pause when he says this.
Okay.
So maybe
okay, I'll read to the end of this page and then we'll
otherwise you'd pause and he didn't pause, and you got to be like Pete.
Exactly. Well, yeah, I'm pausing because I'm just trying to not scream.
Right.
Which is not always easy. Anyway, Mr. Peterson does not pause when he says this. Enforced monogamy is, to him, simply a rational solution. Otherwise, women will all only go for the most high-status men, he explains, and that couldn't make either gender happy in the end. Quote, half the men fail, he says, meaning that they don't procreate, and no one cares about the men who fail, unquote. Can we all just take a moment to just, if you need to, step out the room, to engage in some primal scream, just get it out.
Into a pillow, if you can,
release, exactly. Punch your soft furnishings if necessary. Nothing living or concrete, but just release and breathe. Right.
So apparently, men who don't have partners are destined to engage in violent attacks. Men, according to Peterson, are inherently violent if they are single.
Yeah, which makes me think he has a very, very weird understanding of what toxic masculinity is, especially considering he doesn't believe it exists. So, yeah. I mean, like I said before, these misogynists are also enormous misandrists because they're literally saying, if you're single, you've got a perfectly good reason for mowing down 10 people.
Right. He said, "Oh, it just happens. Oh, that just happens. You know, you can't stop it. It's not anybody's fault. It just happens. So how do we hold these men blameless while finding a solution? Oh, here, we'll just give them women's bodies as sperm dumpsters.
Yep.
So we'll use the women to be sperm dumpsters so the men don't kill each other. They'll just beat on the women instead.
Yeah. and it's disgusting on a number of levels. Obviously, hugely misogynistic, denies women's agency or choice. It's also terrorism apology. Well done there, Mr. Peterson, you piece of garbage. It fails on a number of levels. It's probably something I'll just mention it now. A point that occurred to me whilst thinking this through, sort of preparing myself mentally for this nonsense, was that he says that single men or that enforced monogamy is a way to keep men from being violent. I would point toward the first half of the 20th century, which is the absolute golden era as far as these people are concerned, the era to which they want to take us back, as an example of precisely why you're wrong, Mr. Peterson. In that era, you had enforced monogamy. By law, women were basically treated as essentially second-class citizens in large parts of the Western world, and yet you had the two most destructive wars that humanity has ever engaged in, and genocide on a level previously thought unachievable. So I don't really know what kind of historical precedent you think means that even if you were to be able to enforce monogamy, that would lead to no violence, because it's just not true.
Also, crime rates are going down.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Yeah, we now live in an era where we don't have the enforced monogamy, and yet it's certainly in the Western world the most peaceful phase that's ever existed in the history of these lands. We've never been less at war with one another than we have been for the last 40 years.
Yeah, he just makes these broad, sweeping statements like, oh, violent attacks are what happen when men do not have partners. But he doesn't put this in like, over this period of time where men did have lots of partners, violence went down. But here there was a shortage of women and violence went up. No, I mean, he cites two people who are doing like Evo Psych stuff on why, about like murder, why men murder in society. And the ways that through Evo Psych that you could explain how monogamy was a way to deal with competition between males for females, and that because the premise was when men fought, they would actually kill each other, whereas apparently like other species, they kick each other's butt, but they don't go out trying to kill each other, and that men kill each other over really trivial matters of honor and status. And I don't know, you could read the abstract, he posted it, but none of it has to do with addressing a problem from today. I mean, I don't think that you're saying school shooters who are 17 years old, the way to solve the problem is to get them married at 17.
Maybe he's saying that. Maybe he's saying you should be providing 16-year-old sperm dumpsters for these young men.
Also, oh, okay, do you have anything you want to say on that? Because otherwise I'm going to go on to the other piece of bullshit that he's spouting.
What's your piece of bullshit? Because I have a piece of bullshit too.
Okay, this idea that women only go for the most high status men.
Okay,
right?
but before you go on to that, just sticking
Okay.
with the phrase enforced monogamy.
Yeah.
Now, when that first came out, the instant you think, well, enforced literally has the word force in it. So how is he thinking of enforcing that? And obviously, people jump to state enforcement, which obviously leads you to thinking of the incel stuff. The idea of redistribution of sex. And essentially, Peterson is setting himself up as the thin end of the wedge intellectually for that. And in reaction to this article, and I'll just switch over to that one. Can we now see that, the tweet from Peterson? He
Yep, can
says,
see it.
yeah, he says, furthermore, anyone motivated by the New York Times, so he's responding directly to the article, to assume that what I meant by enforced monogamy was anything other than social convention favouring stable pair bonding can think whatever they want, as they no doubt will anyway. Now, even if it were social convention, that's still bad, but let's just stick with the idea that he's talking about state force to enforce this monogamy. He's saying, no, that was further from my mind. He's backtracking and backpedaling and desperately trying to cover his ass, basically. And the problem with that, Peterson, is we have fucking receipts, you piece of garbage. He tweeted this on the 17th of December 2016.
Nice.
Could casual sex necessitate state tyranny? Question mark. The missing responsibility has to be enforced somehow, parentheses. You're garbage, Peterson, and you're an authoritarian piece of garbage at that. You do want to enforce this kind of nonsense through state violence, or at least you're happy to play into that incel bullshit. Fuck you, you lying piece of shit.
Boom.
I'm done. You were going to say?
Yeah, can we go back? Yes. So, all right. Let's break down this notion that women will only go for the most high status men. Can you fast forward to the marriage rates by men and women?
Yes. The graph thing.
Yep. Oh, look at all that. Right. So basically, how statistically likely is it that someone will get married? If women are only going for the top males, then you would assume that only about 20 to 25%, maybe 30% of men in the country would get married. Well, look at that. By the time you hit 30, more than half of men are married by the time they're 35, 71%. And by the time they're 40, 78% of men will have been married. So where are all these, men who aren't getting laid? I mean, basically, it's a function of getting older and meeting people. That's
Yeah.
what it's about.
And gaining confidence. Because when you're young, you're not necessarily confident, but by the time you get to your 30s and 40s, you've got a bedrock of confidence of those kind of social interactions and potentially career success to build on. And financial success, which obviously helps.
And I think 20 is way too young to make a lifelong commitment.
Yeah. When I was 20, frankly, I'm looking back, I'm surprised I didn't end up dead or something. I mean, I just so irresponsible to make that kind of decision. Like when people get pregnant at that age, it's just you're too young, you're too irresponsible at that age to be making those kind of decisions.
Yeah, and more than half of men by the time they're 30 got married, and then there's a big uptick between 30 and 35.
Yep.
So
also, not a big point, but notice how women are represented by a diamond there.
yeah, yeah.
Yes. Anyway, not a massive point, but still everyday sexism, Anyway, so should we go back to the article? I can remember where the fucking hell we were. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Way too far. He's not that far back. Oh, you won't get that joke yet. That's a Rick and Morty season 3 joke you won't get.
Oh, well, spoilers.
No, it's not really that much of a joke. It's fine. It's just a reference. It's not a joke.
Right.
Oh,
so
yes. Half the men fail, and meaning they don't procreate. And no one cares about the men who fail. All right. I'm sorry. Who determined that what determines if a man is a failure or not is whether or not he gets a woman pregnant? Who made that rule? I didn't remember learning about that rule at school.
I don't know if he's deliberately trying to play into it, but there's the white nationalist notion of just passing on your genes. The kind of, again, the idea that you exist purely to do that.
Well, I do think this is sort of the Evo Psych part of, we exist to sort of pass on, our genes, and those who do it win. But you know what? That's not a truth. That's just a way we understand biology. Honestly, like I personally, as someone who doesn't have kids, I think I won because I've got a lot more money to spend on myself, and I sleep in every day of the week if I can.
Exactly. I've chosen not to have children, and that will be remaining the way I want it to be. And I love it. Yeah, I'm more than happy.
So Jordan Peterson doesn't get to decide which men are failures. And I certainly do not see society judging men on whether or not they have kids. I see a lot more for women.
Yeah, sorry, I've just totally talked over that, yes. But I was going to make the exact point, that women are judged for that. When I go to a party, no one asks me why I haven't got kids. Whereas if a female of my age goes to a party, everyone says, "Oh, are you having kids? Are you getting married?" All of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Anyway, I mentioned the white nationalist thing. We've had the glorious Mr. Peterson, old Prof P, in Britain this week. He's been on every news show, which puts paid to the nonsense of Barry Weiss's shit about the intellectual dark web. You can't call them dark web when they're on every fucking TV show.
No,
he's been on TV. He's been on British TV in about a dozen places over the last few days, so you can fuck off. And his denial that he appeals to the alt-right. You do. I've seen the alt-right mention you and cite you many times. You might not like that, but if you don't like that, change.
I'm going to leave that hanging in the air briefly, and then I was wondering if I could make one more point at this before we move on, which is this. If men are order and women are chaos, then why is the stability of society under threat by men without partners, and why is it women who have to keep them in order? Who is really chaos and who is order in this enforced monogamy solution to violence, male
Well,
violence.
exactly, yeah. How are men order if they, in order to not go on killing sprees, they have to get laid?
Yeah, by the women who are supposed to be chaos.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
here
Maybe
you're
that's what
saying,
they do. They suck the chaos out of men through the vaginas. I mean, that sounds mental, but is it anywhere near as mental as this fucking bullshit he was spewing in the last
that's
week?
true.
Fucking
That's
flop.
true.
Jesus. Anyway, are we done on this one? Can we move
Yeah,
on?
yeah, let's please.
Right. I laughed because it is absurd. Yes, you're quite right there. Oh, this is where it gets. Oh, okay. Right. Quote, "You're laughing about them," he says, giving me a disappointing look. "That's because you're female," unquote. Hmm.
The guy who opposes identity politics because they're bad for discussions just reduced her to one of her identities in order to dismiss her.
Yeah, and shows that he's a sexist prick who does see women as less. But I'd like to point out, JBP, I've got a cock and I identify as male, and I laughed too. I also think it's absurd. Dismiss me on my gender, you prick. He's such a sexist piece of. He's trash. He's fucking trash.
Mm.
Anyway,
Not going to get an argument from me on that one.
shall I continue?
Please.
Right. But aside from interventions that would redistribute sex, Mr. Peterson is staunchly against what he calls, quote, equality of outcomes, unquote, or efforts to equalise society. He usually calls them pathological or evil. He agrees that this is inconsistent, but preventing hordes of single men from violence, he believes, is necessary for the stability of society. Enforced monogamy helps neutralise that. Again, from the misogyny of that's because you're a female to the misandry of men can only not be violent if they're getting their end away.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
and
just
yeah.
I can't think of anything more appalling, frankly. It's if a feminist was to come out and say men are inherently violent unless they're getting their bollocks emptied on a regular basis by these sperm dumpsters, they cry blue murder, the MRAs, but they love him even though he's
And
saying precisely the same shit.
there's nothing in here about creating a society that can deal with this. It's just sort of accepted that women need to take the bullet on this
Yeah,
one
yeah,
and just go ahead and let their bodies be the receptacles for these men who apparently, as Peterson has stated, he thinks are inherently violent, so that the wider society cannot experience his
Well,
violence.
I remember after the Elliot Rodger shootings, which were very similar to the Manisian thing to which they're sort of alluding here, um, although a different mode of doing it, but you get the idea. The same misogyny, the same thing. I remember a satirical, I can't remember which account it was, but a satirical Twitter account who was coming out with some absolutely brilliant analysis of this, going on about, um, like, in a sarcastic way, going in, was it like suck a dick, save a life, that sort of thing, right? The idea that women are there essentially to satisfy men. And yet, Peterson, that's a satire account on Twitter from years ago. And Peterson is basically saying exactly the same thing. And yet he wants to be taken seriously.
There's no, yeah, he doesn't talk about the role of women, their autonomy, their sovereignty as individuals anywhere in this. It's
Or
all
the role
about,
of men, the role of men to self-control.
yeah.
And the fact that men don't own the sexuality of women. It's that you don't get to just say, well, I'm deserving of sex. No, you're not. No one's deserving of anything in that regard.
It is a lot like
It's ridiculous.
the
Anyway,
way that the NRA frames
let's try and get through
solutions.
this.
Can I just say, like, the way they want to say, oh, we need to harden schools, we need to make bulletproof doors, we need to give teachers guns and do everything except deal with the real problem.
Feeling clean or something. And I
And
feel
this is,
reading Peterson makes me feel gross. Anyway,
and Peterson is doing the same thing in that he's, saying the solution is not to deal with the violence in the societies, the toxic masculinity that produces this violence. It's to accommodate it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the problem again, they always set it up so that women can't win, and
Yep.
men are never at fault for anything. It's such childish thinking. Anyway, continuing. In situations where there is too much mate choice, quote, a small percentage of the guys have hyper access to women and so don't form relationships with women, he said, and the women hate that, unquote. Now, as one of these woms, do you hate that, Krista?
I don't even know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
What does he
You're not
mean?
supposed to. He's not
Small
talking to
percentage
you.
of guys have hyper access to women and they don't form
Yeah.
relationships. And what does that have to do with enforced monogamy reducing violence?
Well, there are 4 supermen who fuck all of the women in the world. That's clearly true, according to Jordan Peterson.
Yes, of course, because Jordan Peterson said it. It's got to be true.
Exactly. They wouldn't print it if it weren't true. Anyway, continuing. And there's a big advert in the middle here.
I couldn't do
There you
anything
go.
about that.
I could have done. I could have edited that in Photoshop, but fuck that noise. Yeah, anyway. At one point in the discussion, Mr. Peterson, who had been relatively quiet, became heated on the topic of women who find marriage oppressive. Oh, anyway. I wish I could do a Kermit accent for the because he does. He sounds like Kermit.
He does sound like Kermit. Yeah.
So I don't know who those people think marriages are oppressing, he says. I read Betty Friedan's book because I was very curious about it, and it's so whiny, says the man with the whiniest voice ever. Anyway, it's just enough to drive a modern person mad to listen to these suburban housewives from the later 50s ensconced in their comfortable, secure lives, which, by the way, you want to take us back to, so shut the fuck up. Anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I can't even get through a sentence. Right. Ensconced in their comfortable, secure lives, complaining about the fact that they're bored because they don't have enough opportunity. It's like, Jesus, get a hobby. For Christ's sake, you. Oh, and then, yeah, okay, so yeah. Shall I continue or.
Right. Well, obviously, I mean, just this whole idea that here's a person who's smart and talented and they don't feel like their talents are being used. They're stuck indoors cleaning somebody's house when they could be contributing to the world. And Jordan Peterson tells them, why don't you just find a hobby?
Yeah.
Because they're women.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And not just that, but it's assuming that it's only secure people who find that kind of oppression. I'm sure economically destitute women who are being battered by their husbands and can't leave because their children and them are under threat of being killed. I'm sure they can't just go and get a hobby, Mr. Peterson.
Right. Well, he's straw manning with the sort of white feminist concerns in order to avoid talking about real times when marriage is very oppressive.
Yeah, of course. Because again, men can't be wrong.
Right. Because they're in power. So obviously.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And that's based on competence. Again, men can't be wrong. I've talked to a few young women, and they have told me they do not. They do wish that they could be housewives. Mr. Nestor says. Hang on, have I missed something?
Sorry, there was someone else that he was talking to. So skip that paragraph.
Oh, okay. Apologies. So we're skipping that paragraph.
Well, I mean, I think there's a conversation, and then Peter replies.
Okay, so blah 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 blah.
I think it's an interview.
Yeah, I've had lots of women tell me that. Mr. Peterson says women will never admit to that publicly. Unquote. Women are likely to prioritise their children over their work, he says, especially conscientious and agreeable women. When Miss Peterson talks about good women, the sort a man would want to marry, he often uses the words conscientious and agreeable. Any thoughts? As one of the ones, are you conscientious and agreeable?
Passive and basically attention to detail around the house.
Yeah, basically. Ironically, the 1950s housewife you were just having a go at.
Yep. The ideal life for women that women were saying, get me the hell out of here.
The Stepford wives.
And that's his notion. I mean, it's very biblical as well. One of the things that you'll often see, because the Bible was written by men, is that women are praised if they shun makeup, if they shun jewels, if they don't want expensive clothing. Basically, if they're not, because what are you doing back there? Are you building a house?
Well, I can't go off the thing to mute the microphone.
I can mute you.
It doesn't matter.
I've got the control. No, I've unmuted you now.
And as people can see there, I've just put it in. So are you happy now?
Anyway, getting back to the Bible thing, women were, of course, praised if they were inexpensive and weren't asking their husbands for very much and were very focused on God and not this world. And so we are seeing that again. You can almost sort of picture, as you said, the Stepford wife in her, very safe high collar sweater that doesn't show off her bosoms or anything, the skirts that don't go above the knee, and always saying yes and offering to help and get him his tea or whatever, his iced tea. It's like, ugh.
Yes. Hang on.
Yep.
Right.
So what are we up to now?
I have no idea.
Well,
there we
if
go.
you
Right.
go forward. Yeah.
There we go. So now we're on to a thing from Peterson's
blog,
website.
trying to defend himself.
Indeed. I'll read from the Here's Something. Right? Here's something intelligent about the issue, written by Antiquark2 on Reddit. Now that should be your immediate red flag when this supposed intellectual is going to Reddit for his sources. After the NYT piece appeared and produced its Tempest in a Teapot, even he has to say that pretentiously. What a cock. Anyway, quoting from the piece, quote, Peterson is using well-established anthropological language here. Enforced monogamy does not mean government-enforced monogamy. We've already seen that's a lie. Anyway, enforced monogamy means socially promoted, culturally inculcated monogamy, as opposed to genetic monogamy, evolutionarily dictated monogamy, which does exist in some species, but does not exist in humans. This distinction has been present in anthropological and scientific literature for decades.
Which, of course, a lay audience, would know the anthropological meaning of enforced monogamy, and everyone who didn't was the idiot for not being anthropologists, I guess.
Well, yeah, and he knows his audience don't. And this is the thing, as was pointed out, way back. Hang on, where are we? In the very first image. Well, there we go. Yeah. He tells his audiences that they are smart. He's bringing them knowledge, but knowledge that they already know in their bones. He is a confidence trickster of the worst kind. He basically makes them feel like they are smart, like they understand, or they're a part of this scientific thing where they understand the anthropological meanings of these words. He makes his audience feel smart. They're not, because they believe Jordan fucking Peterson, but he makes them feel smart. He panders to their insecurities and makes them feel better about a world in which they feel slightly worried. It's really pathetic. And like I say, he's taking advantage of these people to the tunes of tens of thousands of dollars a month.
Yes. And he's also doing it by obfuscating answering the real question. This entire defense you'll see is him just hiding behind social science. He doesn't really speak to the moral issue of it, or even the practicality of it, or the idea that they're comparing polygamous people to people who practice monogamy. But that's not the problem we're facing. We're facing a modern problem, not an ancient problem.
Yeah. And as we've already seen, I mentioned it as I was reading, he does not mean government enforced monogamy. Yeah, he does. I already showed you the screenshot of that. He does mean government enforced monogamy.
Oh, you, Kevin, your documentation.
Well, exactly. The internet doesn't forget, motherfucker. What was I going to say? Yeah. So this is what, again, it's obfuscation and it's lying, frankly. And what they always do, they go as far as they think they can get away with, and when they get called on it, they reel back. Back. I think probably the first big example of that was when Rouge V released his article about legalising rape on private property, and for 2 years, whilst it remained under the radar, as it were, he stuck to that. He said that was his legitimate argument he was putting forward as a solution to rape. Ridiculous. And then when he got called on it, when he started doing that, those meetings around the world, and it gained public, publicity traction, and the media started calling him on his rapey shit. All of a sudden, it was a thought experiment. It was a think piece. He was just putting it out there to see how people would react. He wasn't literally calling for this. It's the denial. It's a sort of gaslighting thing. The thing you read, you didn't really read. The thing you've inferred from this is completely wrong. You must be a little bit mad. Like, it's really, really shameful.
Yeah, he's definitely using obfuscatory. That's a bad pronunciation of a very complicated word, but he's using language that's covering up things more than revealing them. And then when he gets called out, as you say, he dances away and tries to redefine it. He actually kind of tried to do that again. But anyway, yeah, if you want to move on.
Yes. Simply put, monogamous pair bonding makes men less violent. I think, like I say, the early part of the 20th century, where monogamous pair bonding was the rule of the day, shows otherwise. But anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Here are some examples of well-developed body of basic evolutionary, biological / psychological / anthropological evidence and theory supporting the claim. And then there's a link. Quote, men who transition to a monogamous or less competitive mode of sexual behaviour, fewer partners since last wave, reduce their risk for violence. The same results were not replicated for females. Further, results were not accounted for by marital status or other more readily accepted explanations of violence. Findings suggest that competition for sex be further examined as a potential cause of male violence.
Be further examined for being a potential cause.
Yeah.
It doesn't say it is.
Yeah.
It's, it's an idea, but it doesn't mean it's truth.
But that's enough for him, I think, and it's enough for his stupid audience. That's the thing. He knows his audience is stupid and want to feel less stupid. So he's able to treat them as being stupid while making them feel less stupid. Which is odd, but anyway.
If it was the case that when men are single, they're more violent, and I don't even know what that means. Like, are you saying when men don't have sex? Because men can be married and not be having sex.
And they can be single and having a lot of sex.
Exactly. So again, not very well thought out.
But again, it's just the Stepford wife situation where men are married and having sex, and women and men are, the young single people are chaste until marriage.
Yes, that's really. Yes.
Yeah, because apparently it really is 1920 in his head.
But but men kill when they're not having sex, so we have to get married at like 16. That's what. To stop all this violence.
Or even younger, as it was in the Bible. Anyway, never mind. What I was going to say, just to clarify, I know it wasn't like that in 1920, but his idea of what that was, anyway.
We don't have to go through. I think this is just the end of his thing. We kind of got his apologetics.
Want to read through?
Do you want to? Are you enjoying it?
I don't care, frankly. Do you want me to read it or not?
I think we've heard enough from JBP. I think we can move on to the other things because there's some other stuff we have to trash him for as well.
Hang on. I just want to read this.
Yeah, that one's fine.
Just the plain, bare common sense facts. Socially enforced monogamous conventions decrease male violence. That's not true. In addition, and not trivially, they also help provide mothers with comparatively reliable male partners and increase that probability that stable, father intact homes will exist for children. It really is. I mean, it's just suburban, 2.4 kids, house and a wife and a car, 1950s fantasy land in Jordan Peterson's head.
I don't see any criminologists calling for marriage as a solution to recidivism in society, crime. So people committing second and third crimes. Oh, just get them married. That'll fix it.
Yeah,
it's just such nonsense. I mean, they're using, again, he's citing a lot of academic studies that are looking at cultural things.
Oh, look at my beautiful face.
Yeah,
my beautiful face. That just happens to be the next picture. There's me. I SJW'd my hair for a thing. Anyway, I'm going to get rid of this bollocks now, right?
Was that all of them?
Yeah, there's the India one.
Oh, if there was just one thing, which is a culture that I have visited that does have socially enforced monogamy, and that's India. In India, marriages are arranged. Marriages are accepted. It's sort of like a thing everyone expects you to do. By the time you're sort of 25, when you're a woman, 27, when you're a man, especially, pressure starts to come on to you. Okay, who are you going to get married? And then when you're married, when are you going to have kids? When I traveled in India, I had a fantastic time. It was a fascinating country. Just
whereabouts did you go?
I was in Goa for pretty much all, which was really nice. But everywhere I went, especially men, if I interacted with them, because they're like running the shops and stuff, because it's quite a sexist country, they would ask me where my husband was, and I would say I'm traveling on my own, and they would look at me like with this faces like does not compute,
Which was a sort of reference, which that draws us back to what I was saying at the start about her having a lesbian husband in India.
Yes. Does not woman not having like, are you widowed? No, I like my life uncomplicated. And that was something that just blew them away. And if I lived in India, I'm sure that would be something that people would be taking me aside and telling me I need to fix about myself all the time. I wouldn't be free to have the live I want. I would be my individual sovereignty, to quote Jordan Peterson from the Monk talk on political correctness, would be violated to live in such a society. It would be,
Yeah,
because I would be
but
pushed into a relationships perhaps just to make other people happy rather than because I wanted to do it. Oh,
if
yes,
you're
and
gonna,
then you're going to bring up the image now.
I was just going to say, if you're going to quote Peterson, do the dragon stuff because that's funny. Do you know what I mean? Do that.
But
Yeah.
my stuff
One
was
second.
very minor. This was just to kind of set up a very casual experience. But enforced monogamy has a real undertone to that, which is women
Yeah.
can't escape from domestic abuse and their children can't escape from domestic abuse because
Yeah.
women are told, and they're told this too in religions right here in the United States, that divorce is a sin, that God is sending them a test, and that it's their duty to find a way through this by praying and being a good person, but the marriage has to come before their own safety and happiness.
Well, exactly, and the safety of their children. And that's the thing. When it's just yourself, you might risk going to hell. But when you're told that your children will go to hell, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's a strong pull on anyone, frankly.
Yeah, so we see that. I mean, I picked India because that was where I was just kind of surprised how often I was asked where my husband was. But that's not to say that the kind of enforced monogamy doesn't exist in the United States. And this is from a bbc.co.uk article about India and the problems with domestic abuse. And I just pulled out the section here where a woman was saying that when she went to family and friends because she was being beaten by her husband, they weren't very sympathetic. Why? Because she should stay married.
Should I read?
Yeah, it's too small for me, so you'll have to. Maybe just
Okay.
to figure out, maybe go down to, but it all got too much to bear about halfway down because it's quite a lot of
Okay.
text.
Right. But it all got too much to bear. 4 months after her wedding, she left him and went back to live with her parents. Domestic violence is not unique to India, it occurs around the world, but what sets it apart in India from many other countries is the culture of silence that still surrounds it. When Aditi sought help from her mother, she received little sympathy. Quote, I told my mum even, that this is what I'm going through. There was a time when I showed her bruises on my legs. I told her about the fact that my husband had forced himself upon me, and she just said, "You can, how can you say this about yourself? How can you say that about him? You just need to live with him. You need to endure it. You do whatever it takes to make your marriage work." Unquote. Sunita's childhood friend, who had introduced her to her husband, was equally unsupportive. Quote, I called her to ask what I should do. She said, You should have let him kill you. She said, If I were you, I'd choose death over separation. Once you're married, there's no other place for you. Your life away from your husband is meaningless. Unquote.
That's enforced monogamy for women. That's the reality of it.
Yeah.
It might be for the convenience of men for sex and to reduce their violent tendencies, but it's women who will die.
Yeah. And as we can see from this case, it doesn't actually reduce their violent tendencies. It just hides them in the home.
Yep. Because if I'm not saying men are inherently violent, Jordan B. Peterson is. If that
Yeah,
premise is true, it doesn't change their being violent if they're having sex, as you point out. It just gives them a different target.
exactly. There are some men who are naturally more violent than others, is the point. It's not that every single man is going to beat their wife. The point is, having enforced monogamy means that women can't escape, which is basically what Peterson and the incels want.
Yep.
Yeah. And on that incredibly somber bombshell.
And depressing, yes. Was there anything we were going to wrap it up with at the end? Oh, yes. I talked Kevin into just holding the chat open for any comments about this topic because with it being Peterson, I thought there might be people who would want to comment. So we'll do a little chit chat for up to a minute, and then if people have things
I'll
that
do
they
some up to a minute, yeah.
up to a minute, yeah, then we'll do some chit chat with the chat if you guys have anything that you want to say.
Do we have to? Because I mean, the thing is, the people in our chat are subhuman. They're weird dragon lobster creatures who I don't think can be trusted.
I should say, we had a whole conversation about the fact that when we do watch the chat, you guys aren't even like paying attention to what we're saying. It is pretty much like we're at a restaurant and you all are sitting at a different table and you kind of overhear our conversation, but basically you're drowning it out because you're so busy with your own conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, from Sabrina Granger. Oh no, sorry, that was moving because the text was moving. It was actually Joey Jojo. Peterson is a wanker.
Well, that's the thing. On a serious point, why can't these men just masturbate if just ejaculating is the issue?
That is true, actually. And Essence of Thought also has an interesting suggestion to the solution of not being able to have sex in that video on incels as well. And there was a request to talk more about incels. Do you want to more specifically link the ideas of Jordan Peterson and how that ties into incel ideology? Oh, yeah, and you want to also promote your appearance on a recent podcast.
Yes, I appeared on the Polite Conversations podcast along with David Sherratt, who is formerly Spinosaurus King, although he was a twat when he was Spino, but anyway.
Your verbal sparring partner.
Indeed. I accidentally insulted a disability of his when I didn't realise. He has a concave chest, so when he was pointing to his chest and said he didn't like the way it looked, I mocked him. I did a little bit of body shaming because he was doing body shaming of women, and I didn't realise he actually had a medical problem. Never mind. I also called him my pet gimp, which was fun. Anyway, this is getting weird. Right, he's now a nice young man. He was a prick back then. He was a kid, but he's a nice young man. And we both went on to Ina Nice Mangoes, which is her name. Her I think like conversations. We talked about all this incel stuff, and it was just after the Alex Manissian thing in Toronto where he killed 10 people, which Jordan Peterson is now making excuses for because he's garbage. Anyway, so you can go and see that. I'll put the first part of it on my channel, but go and subscribe to her podcast because it's fucking brilliant. She's done stuff with ContraPoints and H Bomber Guy and various other good people. Anyway, yes, Jordan Peterson for me is essentially the thin end of the wedge of the incel ideology, or that's what he's sort of putting himself forward as with this enforced monogamy shit. And it's dishonest, as I showed, because he does want to use state force, clearly, or he's at least prepared to wink, wink, nudge, nudge in that direction for people, whilst also saying, oh, I'm not appealing to these people on the right or anything, even though he's basically doing the fash thing of saying the state can enforce this kind of shit. He's basically saying that he wants the redistribution of sex, but trying to put it in a more subtle, easier to digest way, whereas the incels are much more blunt about it. The incels will literally just say redistribution of sex, women as sperm dumpsters. Peterson is, like I say, the thin end of that wedge, trying to wedge it into the conversation so that when you then read the incel stuff, it doesn't seem as extreme. He's doing essentially the kind of a weird analogy, but when Glenn Beck was on Fox News doing his crazy routine, all of a sudden people like Bill O'Reilly didn't seem quite as crazy by comparison. And that's sort of what he's doing for this really nasty, fascistic, bitter, violent incel language. He's inserting that kind of shit into the dialogue, into the conversation on big platforms, because like I say, they're not part of a dark web. He's on TV all the fucking time. He's been on every major network in the fucking world. And he's got a squillion subscribers and gets $1 squillion a year or a month on Patreon. He's inserting that kind of poison into the dialogue, and it makes their extremism seem less extreme. And he's apologising for terrorism against women as well. So fuck him.
What do you think of Dusty Smith coining what Jordan Peterson, when his reference to enforced monogamy, sexual Marxism?
Yeah, exactly. No one's getting sex unless everyone's getting sex. Yes. Absolutely.
Everyone according to his needs.
Well, exactly.
That's sexual Marxism. It's the Peterson version of cultural Marxism.
Yeah, although he's very careful not to say cultural Marxism because he knows the Nazi beginnings of that, and he doesn't want to be accused of that. He says stuff like, was it social Marxism is a favourite allusion that he uses. It's very, very slippery.
Speaking of slippery, wavy pages. I don't know, a wave, ocean wave. Says Peterson's ideas feel very Handmaid's Tale-ish.
Oh, actually, that's a very good point. But Joey Jojo just come up with a great one for sexual Marxism. Comrade. Nicely worked.
That's yeah. That's actually pretty funny. Also, just to let you know,
and is it no one's communism?
Communism, yes, communism for comrades. Come join the sexual Marxist revolution. Meme that, people.
Exactly.
Also, just so you know, both Leto and Tom say "fuck you" back from the chat.
Good. If you liked me, I'd have to change.
All right, well, basically, the chat's still doing their own thing, so we're gonna. I think they're ignoring us again, so we can let that go.
They're doing communism / sex puns now, which is
way more fun than what we're doing. So fair enough.
Basically, that's my wheelhouse. That's right in the sweet spot.
You should be in the chat, basically, not in the show. Well, I'll let you join that chat by wrapping it up now. Obviously, that's a paradox. Kevin can't both be in the chat if there's no show, because it can't be a happy hour without Kevin.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so then I do my wrap-up thing. All right, guys. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of the video. Do appreciate your time and attention, and also for the sassy people in the chat, we appreciate you too. Kevin really does, even though he likes to.
Oh, he doesn't. He thinks you're garbage. Go away. Why do you keep watching?
I've been Kristi. You guys have been awesome. Kevin has been a lot of fun. He's not really interrupted me, so he's not been a naughty boy. So goodbye from me, and goodbye from Kev. Say goodbye, Kev.
Goodbye, Kev.
Bye, guys.